but do you have any questions for us before we get started? Do you have a hard stop? I try to keep this to a little bit under an hour, but if you have a hard stop, I'll just note it and wrap it up sooner.
I do. No. Yeah. My next meeting is 11:30 my time. So this is scheduled. I think you have it done at 11:15. So I have a little bit of like wiggle room, but
Okay.
I'm not too concerned if it goes over. So
Okay. Yeah, we typically don't, but I say typically don't. But then, like, a lot of times we finish and then we just start talking about other things, and then
Right.
so that's fine. But I'll just I usually keep the podcast itself to 45 minutes to an hour. So
Okay.
all right.
Yeah.
Are you good to go, Jen? Are you good to go? Okay. All right. All right. Good morning, Laura. Welcome to the Claims Never Sleep. So happy to have you. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to you.
I am so excited you're here, and especially because this is, I think, the third time we've scheduled this podcast. So it's like third time's a charm. We're here.
That's right. It's happening today.
Yes. I mean, life and litigation often gets in the way. So
It's true.
It's all about being flexible.
That's right.
But you and I had talked like a while ago about coming on the show, and one thing that I talked to you about all my guests, but you and I talked about is how you got into claims. And if I remember correctly, I think you had family that was in insurance, right?
I did. I had a lot of family in insurance. So my mom was an insurance agent. She's just recently retired, but she was an agent. My brother was an adjuster. My dad at some point was an agent as well. So my godparents are agents. All of our family friends, we were all, I literally grew up, I was in a playpen behind my mom's desk. So I grew up in insurance, listening to insurance, and told my mom that I would never, ever be in insurance. And actually, the program, the company that she was an agent for was Farmers, and at the time I graduated high school, they would give you a full scholarship if you would agree to go work for Farmers after you graduated, and I would not. I told her I did not want to go into insurance, so I did my own thing, and 3 months after I graduated, I started work at Farmers, and that's where I started my career. And I worked for them for 5 years, and yes, it was a great company to work for. I wish I'd made a different decision growing up, but I think that everybody kind of falls into it. But I feel like I was also kind of destined into insurance, at least though I went to the claim side and not being an agent. So there's that. I have a little bit of.
Yeah, you definitely missed out on some college savings there.
I did.
Oh well.
I wouldn't change my college experience. It was good, and I still, it was great. But
well, when you were in college, like what was your plan then? Like, did you have a plan of what you wanted to do, or what were you studying?
I studied health, actually, and I'm still very passionate about health. Health education was what my degree is in, and the education piece actually came in very helpful in learning how people learn and development, and that's really what I'm passionate about in claims. And the position I'm in now is developing the younger generation and training. I really enjoy mentorship and that sort of thing. So, and that's kind of played into it. I have an understanding of how you educate people, and I got that from my degree. The health is just kind of my passion on the side. So I really enjoy listening to all the podcasts, the Huberman podcasts and things like that about health and fitness. And it's an interesting time in what we're in our country when it comes to health. So I really, I'm still passionate on a personal level with that. But I claims though kind of let me do what what I kind of always wanted to do, and being a detective somewhat. So I love true crime, and I love reading. I read all the murder mystery books and all of the detective series, and I love that. And I never really thought too much about how that kind of claims plays into that a little bit, or plays to that detective and
Mhm.
investigation aspect of what I like. So um, it's a great career, and I think that a lot of people just pass it over, as insurance is something that people fall into, and we are seeing more and more colleges and universities that have degrees in risk management and
Mhm.
degrees in insurance, which is exciting for our industry. But it's definitely, you never heard about that when I came out
No.
of college. There wasn't. So
No, in fact, we actually recorded a podcast just yesterday with someone who went to school for risk management and insurance, and
oh, wow.
he's younger, in the field. But I was like,
Yeah.
you're like one of the first that I've talked to that this was
Yeah.
your path, and it's so great to hear. But yeah, a lot of what we were talking about too
It
is
is.
how to like encourage more people to go into insurance, which we're going to talk a little bit about today too.
Of course. Of course.
um, but and also you're not the first person to come on and talk about true crime. So I think that's a common theme I see with claims, and I think you bring out a good
Yeah.
point that there is a very much a detective aspect to this profession,
Mhm.
and trying to piece things together.
Yeah, it really is. I never saw it until actually when I was what I call a baby adjuster and working at Farmers. One of my good friends is a teacher, and she teaches middle school age kids, and she was teaching a program that was for underprivileged kids, and it was kind of to give them a leg up. And show them the opportunities that they had before them. And she would have guest speakers come in. And she called me one day and she's like, "I would really love you to come in and talk to my class." And I said, "Nobody wants to be an adjuster. Like, my job is not that cool. What are you talking about? Why would you want to, talk to me?" And she's like, "No, your job is really cool. You need to, like, I'm telling you, they'll love it. So come talk to them." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll do it." And it wasn't until I started telling them about what I do, and they were like, "You mean you take statements and you go out and you look for evidence and I was like, "Yeah, that's what I do." They were like, "You're like a detective," and I was like, "I am like a detective. This is really this is much cooler than I thought."
Yes.
But sometimes it's just a change of perspective, and it really is. I really enjoy the people aspect of it, and getting building a rapport, getting to help people. You really do get to help people in this job, and I think that at the core of it, most adjusters want to help the people that
Yes.
have been impacted by claims, and getting it while also helping our clients and getting things resolved.
Yeah, and that is something again that comes up so often on this podcast is, you know, the misconception of insurance companies and adjusters that you're out to pay as little as possible, and
Mm-hmm.
but in fact really most everyone is here just to help people and just figure out a
Mm-hmm.
resolution to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
um and there's just a giant misconception out there, but um you know
Giant. Like,
yes.
even what was the beginning of The Incredibles? Did y'all see that? The
Yes.
Incredibles, where he's like an adjuster? Yeah. It is there's a bad misconception out there of what we do. And I think that, at least in my career, every company I've worked for, all the companies I work with, which I think I have 300 insurance carrier clients plus, a year. Um, it's, they want to pay what they owe. They
Hmm.
want to, they want to do the right thing. Um, it's not about trying to get one over on anybody. It's really about
No.
helping people get what they deserve, and getting things resolved.
Yes. So let's back up a little bit before we kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So you're at Farmers, and at Farmers, are you like handling like claims? You're adjusting claims.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I handled what they called, like, I was a liability adjuster there, so and personal line. So it was homeowners and auto liability, mostly in determining who's at fault in accidents, and then handling the injury portion of the claims and settlements. I was a direct adjuster for a while, which meant I dealt directly with people that were not represented pre-litigation. And then I went to their attorney rep group, which was if there was an attorney involved in the claim, so a little bit bigger severity. And then when I left there, I was a litigation adjuster, so I only handled litigated files and working with defense counsel on defense plans. And then I moved to Engle Martin, and I came over here as a senior level adjuster, and I was a senior level adjuster for about a year, and received a promotion to general level, and then director of probably the central part of the United States. We kind of changed the division up a bit. The way that our company works and handles GL is a little bit different than it was then, but then eventually they've given me more and more responsibility as I've stayed here, and now I'm a vice president Casualty Operations.
Yeah, this is what happens when you do well at your job. You get like more things to do.
Work. More work.
So tell us a little bit though, about what Engle Martin does, because some of our listeners might not be familiar with it.
Sure. So Engle Martin is an adjusting company. We, my division is independent field adjusters is what I oversee on the GL side. So we're any third-party claims. So we do property and liability third-party claims. So and I oversee our national casualty operations. So I have about 80 adjusters nationwide. We also have more of a property presence, our middle market property, and we have a specialty loss group that does a high complex property, first party losses as well. And then there's we have a lot of offerings, service lines on that are in more niche areas like specialty marine and transportation. We have a specialty auditing services, and we have a carrier outsource group, and we have a TPA that we work with as well as, and we've kind of acquired again niche markets and areas as well. But
well, and I imagine too in your role, like I feel that negative connotation that you're out to like undercut what insureds are owed is more prevalent too for you, because you're going out, you have field adjusters out there assessing the damage or assessing the claim. And I think there is like a misconception, they just want to like give us as little money as possible.
Yes. So there definitely is, especially when you're dealing with third-party claimants. We're not. We're the other guy's insurance, right? Or we represent the other guy's insurance, which is always difficult. The really cool thing about it, in my experience, though, is when we're able to turn that around and we get these compliments from claimants that are like, "Oh man, you guys made the process so much easier for me, and I appreciate your honesty." And we don't get paid based on how much the estimate is, so it's not like we get more like for like a higher estimate or not. Our job truly is to try to bridge the gap and adjust, because that's what we do. We're adjusters, and to negotiate it and to get it settled for what's truly owed.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. Like, and that's actually come up like just recently in a case Jen and I had. One of our third-party adjusters, like he had to testify, and he's like, I don't really care if I find the insurance company owes you $50 million or $50,000. It makes no difference to me.
It's not my money, literally not my money, and it's not. And we don't get paid. We get paid hourly, so they're paying for our expertise and our judgment, and it's which is really. I've always enjoyed being in that position. So the hard parts about being an adjuster kind of got taken away when I became an independent adjuster, and I got the part I like, the investigating and evaluating damages and building relationships with people without having to worry about coverage and and denying claims and things. I don't have to do that. So
I also think there's a misconception with people on what product they're purchasing. right? Like that's the agent, the broker's responsibility if that's the way you're purchasing your insurance. We just redid our kitchen and our bathroom, and so I reached out to our agent and said, "Hey, I need to up our homeowner's insurance." And my husband said, "Hey, I would have never thought about that." He said, "I never would have thought that we would have to change the value." And that people don't, right? And then what if they have a fire at their home and now their house, they can't rebuild the kitchen they just built, So I think there's a huge gap there of people just not knowing what they need to buy and what they do buy and what it's going to cover if they
Mhm.
indeed need it at some point.
There is. And you find that even more so now with all of the direct sales where there's not even an agent involved and they're going online and just buying an insurance policy. They think, oh, I'm going to buy, you want to buy the bare minimum, right? You don't want to pay for what
Right.
you don't need. And everybody's worried about their bills and how much it's going to cost. And you end up with a liability only coverage on an auto policy is a really puts people in a difficult spot. But
Yeah.
there's definitely a value in having that expertise in an agent that can guide you when you're purchasing your insurance,
Yeah.
for sure.
So take me through this though, and I know you're in a vice president role now, so you're probably you're not in it as much, but you were in it for a lot, like actually in it for a long time. Um, how do you approach a claim scene? Like if you're going to investigate and
Mhm.
evaluate and adjust a claim, like what steps are you taking, or do you expect like your team to take?
First step is really we're going to review everything the insurance company sends us. They normally have some documentation, at least a first notice of loss with some details in it, and we're going to review everything that comes in. Depending on the loss type, do internet research on it. A lot of losses we get make the news, so we're looking at news articles and finding out what we can find out there, and then we're going to start making contact with people. First call is to the client to get on the same page and make sure that we're doing exactly what they need us to do, and investigating what they want, not doing anything that they've already done and duplicating efforts, that sort of thing. And then we're going to call the insured, and talk to them. um, that's really a trust building exercise, and letting them know we represent their insurance company. We've been hired by their carrier to assist them, and um, here's the process. I've always found the very first, the most important communication is in that first phone call and letting them know what the process is and
Yeah.
managing expectations. So that's really the goal of that first phone call, and to the insured and to the claimant, right? And we're going to do that all the same day we get an assignment. So
Mhm.
we don't, as soon as our adjusters get it, they start working it. And that's the job on with the claimant as well, is introducing ourselves, building that rapport, and establishing a place of trust. This is what the claims process is going to look like. This is where I fit in into that process and where you fit in, and these are the expectations that you can expect, or how you can expect it to progress. And as long as you do what you need to do and you communicate at every level of the process, it goes very smoothly.
Yeah.
I found the biggest breakdown is when we stop communicating, and
Mhm.
that's really the key, is and the importance, and what I stress to my team is that you're communicating at every step with every party, and you're responsive. If it is when you stop communicating that things
Yes.
fester. Nothing gets better with time in the claims world. It only
No.
gets worse.
It does.
So I
So,
have a
but and
question.
when we go to this, when we're actually at the scene, and depending on the loss type, we're looking at the entire um, loss location first and evaluating what kind of business is this, or what kind of intersection is it where it occurred, what kind of, is it at somebody's home, is it what is the different expectations at different buildings, right? If you're
Mhm.
going into a theater, you have different expectations than a grocery store or a retail place or a convenience store. So looking at the overall condition of the building and that sort of thing, then we're going to go um, inside and see if it's a slip and fall claim, is it, you know, what path was the person taking, and did that path make sense? You would be very surprised at how many people see an opportunity to have a slip and fall and then go, and there's some fraud indicators. And I've gotten to see some videos of some interesting things where you would be shocked at people are like, oh, there's a cord there, let me go trip. And you know, so
I was going to say, give us some examples. What are you seeing?
I handled a claim in at a casino, and it was
I can't think of a worse place to try to commit fraud. A place with the most cameras.
Place, right? There's cameras everywhere. They are literally watching everything you do the moment you walk in the door. But this lady, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, so that's when casinos typically clean, right? Because it's a less foot traffic around that time. So we, at this case, I was representing the cleaning company's carrier, so we did not represent the casino. So we watch our cleaner come in. They plugged in their vacuum, they're vacuuming, and the way that they vacuum, they went through some slot machines and they were vacuuming this aisle. So there was the cord was going across the aisle. You could see the claimant walk by and see the cord, and she stopped and she looked at it, and she kept walking, and then she comes by and she looks at it again. And it keeps going, and then she comes and she literally walks up to the cord and then just drops to her knees.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it was pretty egregious. That's always an interesting when you get that video and you get to send it to the attorney. Here, why don't you take a look at this and then call me back. So we don't go out trying to catch people, but it's definitely an interesting, you know, when you see egregious fraud, it's kind of fun to
oh yeah. I mean, I would, as a defense attorney, I'd be salivating at that video footage, because look, usually that's not the footage you see. Usually usually you're trying to look, okay, like how like for something like that, like, okay, was there a notice? Was there a sign? Like, you know, what are we looking at? But that I'd be like, oh, we got a live one.
We have that was a fun one for sure. I've also had claims where it's one of the ones that I had the most fun is right after or right as Facebook became very, very popular. And I had a claim. It was an auto accident, and the claimant was a bodybuilder, and she indicated that she could not participate in her bodybuilding activities, and she was not able to work out like she could before. And I just went on my personal Facebook page and did a social media search before it was a thing, and found her that the weekend after the accident, she actually participated in a tournament and won.
Oh,
so
of course,
it was great.
I loved early Facebook and claims because that's before everyone wised up to keeping it offline, because you would really find some wonderful gems on there.
Yes, you did. You did.
It was a good time.
Great. Before the attorney started telling people not to stop posting on Facebook. Now
it was a really good time. And I remember very early on, it was like my first year out of law school. I had a really contentious case, and there was a lot of alleged Facebook stuff. And I was actually able to subpoena Facebook and get like a full record of everything that was on. And it was like, given the background of the case, I don't want to give too many details, but it was like so salacious to be able to read these emails back and or messages back and forth, and the photos. It was amazing. And then, awesome. Now it's not nearly as exciting because, no one's even on Facebook anymore.
No,
just us old people.
People have wised up to it now. So
yeah.
So I have a question back to what you were talking about before. You mentioned that a lot of your claims are on the news. So can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what kind of claims are you getting that they end up on the news?
Yeah, so we've had there'll be depending on the venues and what you're talking about, I don't want to give away too much of details on one, but there was major city construction defect type losses that are major construction defects. You hear about hotels that have sat empty for some time because of construction defect issues, or hospitals that will investigate the construction defect on. That's one of our biggest areas right now in claims volume is in construction defect claims. So there's a lot of really big construction defect losses out there. But we've also had crane collapse type losses, handled fatality claims that have made it onto the news. And there's especially fatality claims when you have a fatality at a business, because we mostly are in the commercial space. So when there's a fatality at a business, or very bad drinking and driving accidents where there's the liquor liability that's associated with them, that can make the news.
Yeah. The liquor liability claims, I always found those to be tricky. I handled those for a short period of time, and it is just, I feel like those ones are one of the hardest ones to overcome.
They are.
They are. I have a great adjuster in our Austin office who handles a lot of liquor liability, as you can imagine, because of 6th Street and the university presence and things in Austin. So it's when you're a field adjuster and you're handling those kinds of claims on a frequent basis, you get to know the bartenders in the area. They get to know who you are, and it can, when you build rapport with the people as you investigate it year after year after year, it really they're very interesting, and they are difficult. But again, nowadays with the amount of surveillance you see, that we're able to capture video a lot of time, or get really good records from insureds now, that really helps to alleviate that. Most people that own a bar now, especially in major areas like that, have good policies in place to limit their liability.
Yeah, I mean, it's very uncommon that you don't have a bar with a camera or multiple cameras like behind the bar and everything, because I mean it's protection for the owners, really, more than anything.
It really is.
But on my end, I'm very thankful for it, even for not even a dram shop type claim, just a liability claim. To have any business, just to have the cameras is so helpful, because photographs, I love to have photographs, but there's nothing that can beat actual video.
That's right. It's true. The trick with the video I have found is getting it fast enough before it gets overwritten, because it takes up so much space, and saving that for an extended amount of time. You have to have a good cooperative insured. I've unfortunately gotten assignments where they were like, hey, our insured has video. It overwrites in 24 hours and they don't know how to save it. So I need you to go out there and get this video. And we've resorted to, even if we can't really, if there's no way to figure out how to get it, to taking video of the video.
Yeah,
but
taking a video on your phone. Yeah.
But you got to figure out a way to get it. And we'll get on the phone with the security company and like have them walk us through how to do it if we have to. Getting that and securing that in a way that is going to be helpful to defense counsel later on is extremely important. And that time frame is those things get written over very fast. So.
Yeah, and it's also hard from a defense standpoint though too, because the plaintiffs bar tend to try to even make the argument about spoliation if the video no longer exists, even if there's not a preservation letter, just on the basis, oh, well, there was an accident, you should have known better. And like sometimes they prevail with that argument. And that's hard, because a lot of times too, you have business owners that might not be used to litigation. So they don't have these litigation protocols internally set up, so they don't automatically go through the motions, and they're probably just happy they have video surveillance. and it works, because that happens a lot too. Like cameras are always down.
Oh yeah, cameras are always down, and it's a lot of them are small businesses that we deal with that this is their livelihood, and this thing happened and they're scared, and they don't. Some people, you have a reaction when you're put in a position, and you either, fight or flight. Yeah. And they freeze. So some people just there's that third reaction where it's freeze and they don't know what to do. So a lot of our job is talking them through what they need to do, and making sure that they understand that the carrier's behind them, and we're going to do everything we can to mitigate their risks.
Yeah.
Here in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of small businesses still, right? Like, so a lot of the liquor liability claims I saw were like VFWs, Italian American clubs, like where they didn't have video, they had nothing. And there was one case that we went to a VFW to see if they had video surveillance, and they actually gave us their entire DVR. Like, they just handed it to us, and they're like, well, we have this. If you can figure out how to play it back.
Get it out. Good luck. We're trying here. Yeah. And those kind of businesses are typically kind of older generation, that they don't understand the technology that the younger generation does. So it's definitely can be a hurdle.
Yeah, I remember trying to get video from a VFW, and like they like pretty much laughed me out of the room, and they're like, and then I think I asked for receipts or something. They're like, "Oh, here's our sign-in book." Like,
exactly.
It's like, all right, this is what we're dealing with here today. Okay. And again, middle of Pennsylvania.
Yep, welcome to Pennsylvania. I'd much rather be in Austin, down by the university. We were in Austin for the first time for the CLM conference back in September. And unfortunately, it was a conference, so we're not really living it up on this. And I'm also in my 40s, so I'm not in college. But it's a really cool town. So I envy your adjuster, who now knows all the bartenders.
Yeah, she's a young adjuster too. So early in her career, and that's what she kind of looked like a student when we first hired her. It was like she fit in right in, and people would talk to her. The people involved in the witnesses. She's a great fit for it, and it's become kind of her niche. That and concrete pool claims, because those are very, very common in Austin right now too.
Interesting.
And with what is the pouring of the concrete and it cracking?
There is a concrete cancer. So right when COVID hit, and and
everyone was putting in a pool.
Everybody was in the pools, right? There was a chemical that they put into the pools, primarily in the Austin area. There, I think it is bigger than that, but it's a lot in the Austin. And it basically, this chemical doesn't react well with water. Not sure why you would put that in the pool, but it causes cracking, and there's a lot of pools. We have probably at any given time, she has 60 or 70 claims for this concrete cancer that's going on in Austin right now. She actually is presenting at CLM on it at the one in Dallas here coming up. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. I hadn't heard of, and you're saying like that's like Austin local. It's not like a nationwide issue that you're saying?
So we've seen the biggest in Austin. I think that there's a few here and there that she's gotten with in other areas, but our biggest location primarily has been in Austin.
Oh. That reminds me of the stucco claims that we would see a lot in PA.
Florida.
Yeah, in Florida.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we had a lot of Florida stucco losses too.
Yeah, and that's actually a good segue. What other claims trends are you seeing rise at the moment?
Our biggest rise in claims is really just it's construction defect, but it switches. Who they're going after, who the plaintiff's bar is going after at that time. We had the stucco losses for a while, and then it became windows, and then it was painting contractors, and so I think it's construction defect has definitely grown. We've had, I think when I started, I probably had 20 to 25% of my caseload was GL property claims, and now it's about 65 or 70% of our caseload, and that may be a bit of a. I'd say it's at least 55%, and we're about 40% injury claims still, but it's definitely growing, and the pool claims is a big area, and I would say that that's kind of the biggest kind of hot trend that we're on. We're also, we see a lot of course, there's the weather claims and dealing with on the property side. That's always the fire is a big talking point. What's going on in LA and how carriers are going to handle that is going to be interesting to watch over the next few months, because there's a lot of uninsured folks out there, so it's really scary.
I feel like it's gonna be a big topic. I'm surprised they're not gonna just add it on to the slate for a CLM conference, because maybe they are. I don't know.
they could be, but it's CLM's good about being kind of on top of the latest what's going on. So, but that's kind of construction defect has really been the biggest area we're seeing growth. There is some contractors' liability sprinkled in there too, but it's mostly in the construction area.
And are you finding, are you seeing like certain areas of the country you're seeing a greater rise to claims? Because we hear it on our end all the time. Like when I ask people, I'm like, oh, like, what are your problem jurisdictions? I always hear the same, like 4 states.
You won't hear any different from me. I would say, New York, of course, is always a big one. Florida, Texas, Colorado, California too is one of them. And
those are the ones.
Yeah. And we are seeing a little bit of starting to see more claims in Utah.
Really?
That's but I think that's more of one of our clients' underwriting practices they start writing more there, so we see more claims there. So
and what are the issues that you're seeing that that make those areas more problematic, like those are jurisdictions on your end? Because I know on our end, I'm like, oh, this is a judicial hellhole, or this is this is what the whatever legislative things are going on. But from your end, I'm curious what the problem areas are.
I mean, that's it. It's when you have litigious areas, it just wherever the plaintiff's bar is really focused is kind of where, because we're going to get more claims come in, and people hear about the nuclear verdicts. They're gonna file more claims even if they don't have an attorney. So we're getting most of the claims that we get are pre-litigation, but we do trial monitoring and we do mediations and we handle litigated files too. So we see the same kind of trends, but typically if there's more litigation going on, there's more pre-lit claims also happening right in front of that, right? Because it's the first step. It's just to file a claim. So, South Texas is a hot button area, and really it's kind of major cities. We saw a lot of more liberal judges and plaintiff bar judges getting elected. So you see kind of a rise of claims that follows behind that in those areas.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like for us, like we're like, we have Philadelphia, so we have that, but the rest of PA gets a little more milder, so it's just, it's like, what to get with Philly. And then sometimes even with Philly, it can be okay. From a jury perspective, sometimes Philly's fine. It's sometimes from a judicial decision avenue, that's where the difficulty comes in, because you're not going to get the same review of filings that you might get in other places.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I do think that there is somewhat more of a trend with kind of people being more realistic and expectations and stuff now. Like I do feel like your everyday, when you're talking to claimants, it's a little less egregious, of what their expectations are. So I think that we're able to, we don't have a big percentage of our claims that go litigation. Fortunately, most of the claims we get assigned, it's we're able to get a lot of them resolved, which is great.
That's good. That means you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're doing it well.
I think it's when you tell people from the beginning and you're honest, and you manage expectations, people are a lot more likely to settle. And so, I've got a great group of adjusters that are good with connecting with people. And, I have one adjuster. He's great. He's, good old boy, kind of Texan, and most of his he's in Texas, so most of his claimants are good old boys too, and they just he gets out there and he can just talk to him, and man, his closure is just phenomenal. People trust him. I get more compliments from claimants on him than like anybody else, because he just is able to build trust with people because he's honest. And I think that's the key is when you're honest with people and you just tell them, hey, you're reasonable, like you said, we're not really it's not like we're trying to get one over on people. So
I think you're spot on. I think being upfront and honest with the claimants or our clients is the most important thing that you can do from the beginning of the case, because it's so much easier to just be upfront with somebody and tell them the truth. Like say, hey, you messed up, right? There's so many times as lawyers, like we get so frazzled or upset because we can't fix a problem. And then sometimes you think about it, well, there was an error made, and my job is to smooth it over as best as I can and to resolve it. I can't go back and fix what happened, right? And so like you just have to be upfront and honest with them. Be like, a mistake was made. We're in here for damage control. Let's see what we can do to fix it as quickly as we can.
And that's our job, right? It is damage control. And I mean, especially in my segment, it's liability claims. Somebody messed up. Like that's all I do is somebody messed up. So let me go in and try to fix this as best as I can. And it's, when you lay it out there and you don't, we don't ever admit liability or things like that, but just having a basic human response and empathy just really goes a long way with people. Like I know you're going through it right now. Typically I'm talking to people, or my adjusters are talking to people on one of their worst days. They've had some kind of major thing that is interrupting their day-to-day life. And whether it's, something we don't think is that big a deal is a really big deal to people. I learned that on handling auto claims for sure is, a lot of times I get in a claim when I was at Farmers, and it was, I didn't, you think that when you get an injury claim and a property damage claim on an auto loss, that people are more worried about their injuries, right? That's what I expected, but that is not the case. Most people are worried about their car. And so it's kind of just getting to what are their concerns, and asking the questions, and like where can I help you the most right now and be the most effective immediately, and let's get this wrapped up. Let's get it resolved. And I'm not here to be a bad guy. I'm here to again bridge that gap between the carrier and the claimant, and where can we move this forward.
It is. And I think my husband and I have I've had an eventful year of insurance claims.
Glad you brought it up, Jen, because I was going to if you didn't.
three car accidents and a tree fell on our house about a 9-month period, and they were all single. Like he slid on ice and hit a guardrail. He hit a deer hit me. Like it was nothing. It was all just car and like property damage. And the first time he called me, and I'm like, that's why we have insurance. Nobody's hurt. That's why we have insurance. And we had such good experiences with our insurance company, who is probably going to drop us after this year. But it's just like, if you're not familiar with it in the process, it's so nerve-wracking. But like being able to be on both sides, it's like it's been seamless. And it's just, I submitted my invoice for my property damage, and he said, okay, we're covering it all. And he sent me the check back, and I was like, wow. But at the same time, like I submit invoices for the damage that occurred, right? Like I wasn't trying to be like, oh, well, a tree fell on my house, so maybe I should like bump out the back wall and breathe. Like it's all about expectations.
It really is.
I found I was helping out somebody they had a tree claim on their home, not Jen. I wasn't helping her. She didn't need my help. But they had a tree fall on their home, and it caused a considerable amount of damage to the back of their home and the roof and the deck. And I was kind of working with them as a liaison between the insurance company and the contractor. And on my end, everything to me was like they were doing the insurance company were doing everything they were supposed to be doing, but the skepticism of the homeowner caused so many problems that and I was in the middle trying to, like, again, smooth it over between the sides, but there was just such a level of distrust on the homeowner that they were going to get one pulled over on them, or and at one point it got to the point that they had a company and they came out to fix the siding, and they were convinced that they like did something and like took away uh shingles on the roof and covered it up, and I was like, I think they were actually looking to see if there was water infiltration damage, because you had said you claimed that there was water infiltration, so they were checking that, and then they replaced the roof shingles that they pulled off. They put on new roof shingles. That's why it's a different color. But this person was so convinced that they were being taken advantage of, and I think that is something that happens out there too. Like, there's just this level of like, oh, they're gonna pull one over on me and try to and maybe there are some companies out there that do that, but I haven't seen it firsthand, at least. And and for this particular instance, I remember talking to both sides, and they kept being like, this person's being really unreasonable, Megan. I was like, I know, I'm trying my best. Like, that's why I'm calling you, because if they call you, they're just going to yell at you.
Well, there's so much of that out there, just in the space. You got to hand it to plaintiffs' attorneys. They've done a good job of putting that message out there, and
yes.
it is a hurdle to overcome. I mean, I'm just a person, and I have insurance too. I've been on both sides of it. And I've, a hailstorm recently went through my town, in May or so. And unfortunately, I didn't have any damage, but I had a lot of friends in town that had damage. And man, some of the advice that got put out just even on the local Facebook page of that this person's doing this, or don't trust your insurance company doing this. And I was like, hey, I stepped in and helped some people through the process just because I know it, and helping them go through no, if you disagree with the estimate, this is you got to go get your own. Then you have to give them something. They're not just right. They're not just going to negotiate against themselves. You have to, if there's evidence and what you're saying is true, then I'm sure that they'll change your estimate and revise it and supplement things like that. But man, that overcoming that initial, their default position is against us, right? Or against the insured, it's against insurance companies. And so that we're automatically having to come in and make up ground and start out.
And I do think something that's very difficult for insureds to understand is the concept of depreciation. That, and because I feel like they just feel like they're being cheated. Like, I'm being cheated out of thousands of dollars, and I feel like it takes a good skill to try to explain it, and particularly with claims that no, you're going to get this you're going to get this sum, but after you make the repairs, and then you need to have and they're like, wait, what?
It can be very confusing if you don't know it, and they don't see the end game. But that is a big area where managing those expectations and communications, especially on the GL side, because you don't get the holdback. We don't, GL rarely ever pays replacement cost. It is always going to be actual cash value. Mm-hmm. So depreciation is a big part of where we have to explain to people, but managing that up front and explaining, this is a general liability policy. It's only going to pay actual cash value. So that couch, sorry, it's, what would you get for it if you put it on Facebook? It's not a lot. These things depreciate very quickly.
The couch you've had for 15 years and your dog's thrown up on, and there's baby puke in the corner that you cleaned out with the green machine. It's lost its value. It's not worth the same amount it was when you bought it.
It's a difficult conversation, and it's people's, this is stuff that they bought. People don't even like thinking about that when, you buy a new vehicle, as soon as you drive off the lot, that value is not what it was. So it takes a lot of communication up front, but if you stand behind what you say, you do what you're going to say, I found that people believe you, and when you build that trust early on, then later on when you're having to re-explain that, remember we talked about it at the beginning of the claims process, this is what this valuation is, this is how I came up with it, and if I need to reevaluate it and you have evidence otherwise, please let me know. I'm happy to look at that.
Yeah.
Makes it a lot harder to argue.
So, Laura, one thing I wanted to touch on before we run out of time, though, is, you had said early on that, you're really passionate about, attracting the younger generation to come in. So, how are you, like, what is your method in doing that? Like, what are you doing to kind of drum up interest in insurance for the younger generation?
It's really hard. I was fortunate enough to be on the Young Professionals Board when they had it at CLM, and I think it's phased out now. But
Yeah,
I wouldn't consider myself being a young professional anymore. I've kind of passed over that.
I know, but in your head, aren't you still, like, in my head, I'm still like, yeah, I'm young.
Right? I know.
I'm a professional.
I was the oldest person on the board when they made it, and like when somebody asked, I was kind of, one of my coworkers suggested I apply for it, and I was like, I don't think I qualify for that. But when you're talking about insurance industry, I probably still am on the younger side of that industry, where we have an aging group, aging pool of adjusters. It's hard. I'd say one of the hardest things about it is and I think a lot of industries face this, is a lot of people, we're an age of instant gratification, right? And a lot of the younger generation doesn't they don't see the long term. So you got to really show them, like, this is, career. You have to think in terms of career and not job, right? That's a big shift. And when you think in terms of career versus this is my job or this is my career, that's a big mind shift. And getting people to understand, hey, we're going to invest in you. You have to invest back, though. Yeah. It's a relationship, and Engle Martin does a great job of investing in their adjusters. We have a tuition reimbursement program. So if you go to school, like, we reimburse you if it's related to your job, which is awesome. It's an awesome thing. Like, I mean, it's pretty phenomenal when you think about it, that a company will invest in you that way. But there's, we have to try to think outside the box, because not everything that works for one will work for another. I've bought executive coaching for adjusters before, so that they could hear it from outside perspective, and get that feedback from a professional. We have a college program that we're developing. We've had a few rounds. We've piloted it out. We're starting, to train out. But we go to the job fairs, and we do things like that. I think it's things like this, where you're putting your name out there, and you get podcast. Who would have thought there'd be a claims podcast 10 years ago?
Not me.
Not me either. I remember when I first heard of a podcast, I was like, what? And now I love them. But that is a way that you really can speak to younger generations, because that's how they absorb information out. It's a different level than what we had. But it's really, I found that when you get them in front of you, and that you make a connection with them, and you see them for who they are, it's not just a number. That's really what this generation wants, to make a positive impact in the world. And if you can connect what that job is, or your career is, and how that can make a positive impact, it really makes a big difference. So if they can see the why behind it, and not just the numbers aspect of it, I would say my generation more like, or and maybe a little bit 10 years ahead of me, they really wanted to make money, right? They were like that, but I feel like this generation really they want to do good, and they want to have a purpose beyond just a paycheck. So providing that, showing them how insurance career can give them that is really important. So,
and I also feel like the autonomy and flexibility is a big thing, and I feel like insurance provides that more than most industries, because like think about it. Just think about being a field adjuster. Like, you know, you're on your own. You're not chained to a desk. You're moving around. You're talking to people. You're meeting people. You know, your schedule isn't strictly 9 to 5, which I think that appeals to a lot of people. Like I think this 9 to 5 format is kind of like growing old, and I like people aren't as into it anymore as they once were, and it's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. I just think it's a change.
It's a great change. I mean, I think that you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that would say human beings are meant to sit in front of a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day. Like, that's just not what we were supposed to do. And I don't think anybody's really satisfied doing that. And being a field adjuster is a great compromise. You're out meeting people, you're out in the sunshine, you're driving, you're listening to your audio books while you drive, and you're doing different, you know, it's great being out in the field, but also having that time in front of your desk that is more like downtime, and that follow-up is good. We also, you know, we adapted really well to the remote work environment when COVID hit.
Sure.
And it's, you know, finding a balance between having a culture and people in the office, and also keeping that flexibility that people really crave is kind of a challenge that we're facing now. And how do you train the next generation of adjusters when they don't have the benefit of being in the office with somebody that's been doing it for 20 years? Because that's how I learned how to be an adjuster, was listening to that guy next door that was and going hearing him on the phone, and then going in there and being like, what just happened? Can you explain that to me? And you know, younger generation is really hard. They don't want to make a phone call either, right? Like, they want to do everything by email, which is a struggle. Like, man, you can't put everything in writing, especially in claims. And how do you teach? I know I've talked to lawyers where they're facing the same thing with you know, young associates, and they want to put everything in an email and shoot it off, and it's like, you don't want to. Not everything should be in writing. A lot of conversations need to happen, and you don't build rapport with people by email.
No, in fact, a lot of people can sound like real jerks on email, and then you get them on the phone, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I've always found that I feel like I can have a great relationship with opposing counsel, and then they can be the biggest jerk on email, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I think they're doing it so they can show their client, like, look how aggressive I am. You know?
I also think that people just don't see how aggressive it comes across in an email, right? When I find myself doing it. I get an email and I blast one right back, right? I'm starting to type, and I have to go back and go, I didn't even put a greeting on this thing. I just started like straight into my message. I have to go back and like, let me soften this up. Let me do that. And some people just shoot that off instead. And it's, you know, it's a struggle, but 85% of communication is nonverbal. So when you think about that in terms of try to teach younger adjusters, it's 85% is nonverbal. So when you shoot off an email, they get 15% of your intended message. And that is very, very small. It's a very, very small percent. So you really have to be careful about what's in that message.
Well, and I would also like to comment off of, or say something about your comment that field adjusters get to be out in the sun. You're in Texas. The high on Tuesday is -5 here.
So not always in the sun, but let that be the messaging. Field adjusters are in the sun. That is how you attract them in. You don't attract them in with sub-zero temperatures.
I know.
And snow and ice.
It's the reason why I live in Texas and I chose to live here. Is I'm a warm body person, so I enjoy my sunshine, and that I know some people are like, how do you stand it in the summer? And I'm like, you know what, when it's 70 degrees in the winter, that's how I stand it. And you guys are but y'all got nice summers though. So
we have beautiful spring, summers, and falls. It is like November through March that I would like to be a snowbird, but
we could.
Not yet.
Well, I wanted to touch on this though real quick, because when you were talking about communication and how this generation, they don't want to talk to anyone on the phone, it reminded me of this. So before we were recording, we were talking about our 12-year-old daughters, and just recently my 12-year-old was having like a disagreement with one of her friends, and I was like, why don't you just call her? And she's like, no. I was like, well, you realize like the texting back and forth, like something is going to get lost in translation. It can sound different. I'm like, if you just talk to her, like she's gonna see how you're feeling. She's like, I don't want her to see me upset. I'm like, I get it, but like you sound like the texting, like something gets lost. Just like, and it was like hard. Like, I am not calling her. I don't want to do that. And I was like,
100%. It's like, have you seen that Key and Peele skit? They do a great skit about this and how going back and forth on text it's a great skit. So if you haven't seen it, but Key and Peele do a great one on that. But it's having to teach my kids how to go up and introduce themselves. And shake a hand, and it is something that you don't really think about, that you just kind of learn to do when you were younger, because we grew up and that's what you did. But nowadays people are so it's just very, for a generation so connected virtually, the in-person is difficult. It's uncomfortable. It's out of their comfort zone, and that's a lot of what we found. That our first college program, we had to teach people how to shake hands. We had to teach people how to climb a ladder. That they didn't realize. It was eye-opening.
Yeah.
Teaching them how to dress professionally. It was very different than what we expected when we started. We didn't think we were going to have to teach that sort of thing. So it's been a learning process for sure, but we've had really great success stories they're very exciting. And I think that they really want to learn and they want to do good. They just don't know how. And getting them past that, picking up the phone, like, man, it's night and day difference what you can accomplish in one phone call versus emailing back and forth 20 times.
Yes,
absolutely.
I agree. Well, Laura, we are out of time, but before we close up, I wanted to ask you this. Going back to young Laura, who could have gone to college for free. What, knowing what you know now, though, what advice would you give yourself?
So I don't know. I don't think I would change anything I did, even though I took a roundabout way of doing it and ended up where I was. But I think that the advice I would give is to be open to it, and really, claims adjusting doesn't sound like a fun job. I don't think being a defense attorney, it sounds like a real fun job, but man, it really can be fun, and you can really have a positive impact, and stick to your core values, and have and work with integrity and respect for people, and really change the way that this industry is perceived. I think we have a great opportunity to really change that, and you do it one interaction at a time, and it really is one interaction at a time. Let me show you that this is not what we're about. We really want to do right by people, and
I love it. I love it. That's great advice. Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, for all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform. You can also find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much, Laura. See, easy peasy. And I tried to keep it just to an hour. I think I did it good.
Yes, it was great. It was great.
Okay. All right. Let's just hop in and then we can have our post podcast. What?
Around 49 minutes, she said, I forget exactly what she said, but it was definitely like soundbite quality. or soundbite worthy. I forget exactly what her statement was, but I just thought it was like it was about like getting people into the insurance industry.
Okay. Okay. Joe and Eden, pay attention to the 49-minute mark, but I'll try to pay attention when I listen. When I re-listen, I usually don't make it that far when I re-listen for trailers, so I'll have to I usually get about 20 minutes in. I'm like, okay, it's good. We got enough. But okay. All right, ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm here with Jen again. Hey, Jen.
Hi, happy to be here again today. I think I should just be called the co-host.
You are the co-host.
Guest co-host, or instead of the
Yeah.
guest.
And I do think I coined you as just my co-host, and then anyone else who comes on is now a guest.
Excellent. I've been promoted.
You have been because you are a constant here. So maybe we should even change the title. I don't know. But you're a constant on this programming. I think when you're not here, people are probably like, "Where's Jen? What's happened? Is she sick? Is she okay?"
Always happy to be here.
And so today we have on Laura Huffman, and I'm so happy to have Laura. You know, we were supposed to actually film this about a month ago, and we had a number of scheduling issues that happened between, you know, litigation and sick kids and whatnot. But we're finally here today, sitting down and you know, able to talk to her. But I really love Laura. She is at Engle Martin, and you know, she's kind of talks about claims from a different perspective. And you know, her perspective is so helpful because I mean, her team is going in and adjusting claims, and you know, and she's working with insurance companies on that, and so you know, that's a great perspective for her to share. But also, you know, she wants to talk a lot about getting young people into claims. This is something we talk a lot about on this program, so I'm so glad she's continuing that conversation. So with that, let's bring her in. All right, is that okay? I feel like I rambled?
No, that was good.
Okay.